You got the wrong side.
What do you mean?
Like this, I'm gonna be looking at you on this side.
No, it's all right.
But my good side's this side.
Are you sure?
I'm 100% sure.
Let me see.
Telling you.
Oh, yeah, let me see the other side. Oh, you're right.
Yeah. You wanna switch?
I'm only joking.
Come on. You don't have a bad side, mashallah. You're symmetrical. Mashallah. Bro.
This thing keeps... Actually, you know what?
إنك لا تهدي من أحببت ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء.
Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa welcome to the Young Smirks podcast. We've got a very special guest.
How's it going,
Tasleem.
man?
How's it going?
Alhamdulillah. Good. How are you?
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
It's good, man.
So, you also have an alter ego, don't you?
I do?
Yeah.
What's my alter ego?
You know, Zaid.
Oh, Zaid. I thought you meant the theologian. Internal joke for those you don't know.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
So, bro, it's a pleasure having you on the podcast.
It's a pleasure being here, man.
And we've just been in New Zealand for the past 20 days.
Yeah.
Traveling up and down the
Tell
country.
me
How
about
did
it.
you find it?
It was rewarding and yet exhausting.
It's tiring. Yeah.
So it was tiring, but you know, one of the benefits, I got to meet you. That was nice.
Yeah.
We got to have some nice, deep discussions that were off camera.
No, I enjoyed your company, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. Likewise. It was really nice having those deep conversations.
Yeah.
You know, even though it bugged some of our roommates, but that's okay. But no, it was a very rewarding experience. We got to see the people in New Zealand. Very positive. I think a lot of people were impacted by the tour itself.
Yeah.
So overall, I think it was a win. You know, kind of the general result.
Yeah,
So,
it was good.
Yeah.
So just before we begin, can you introduce yourself? Who are you? Where do you come from?
Oh man. So
I mean, and why Superman? Why not Marvel, bro?
Oh man, come on.
I thought you had more taste than that, bro.
Oh man. So let me start with. So yeah, I mean, I'm Fahad. You know, I was born in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Basically born and brought up in the U.S. I took a little stint out in Pakistan at a certain point because my parents, you know, thought I needed a little more culture, not religion, you know, a little more etiquette and things like that. Other than that, I'm like married. I have 5 kids.
Mashallah.
Mashallah. I don't know, man. What else do you want to know? I traveled around the U.S., you know, doing a lot of dawah training and work for IRA specifically, and that's pretty much it, man. I mean, and as far as the Superman shirt, to be honest, it was on sale, and my wife got it for me, even though she knows I'm a Marvel guy, not really a DC guy. But you know, the shirt's cool. You know, I'm not mutashaddid, you know. When it comes to these things, you know, I like Batman. I think he's cool.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, it's all basically DC's God, but you know.
Yeah.
You know.
So you're actually, I mean, you've been, you're currently on your 2nd masters, right?
It's something like that, yeah.
Sorry, this is also a running joke.
So yeah, basically, I have a
Yeah,
master's
mashallah.
in business taxation, and then you know, graduate studies at UT
mashallah.
Austin as well. So yeah, but that was more of like a profession shift. Right? So I started in accounting, wanted to shoot myself, and then started studying, you know, Islamic studies and kind of natural progression. So then wanted to take an academic look at, you know, Islamic studies. You know, alhamdulillah.
So, I mean, you actually found Islam for yourself, didn't you, in your 20s?
Yeah, man. So basically, all the way. So I mentioned I was in Pakistan. So what happened was when we were growing up, I didn't come from a very practicing household, not very religious. I mean, there's some elements of it because we're originally from Pakistan, and so you're gonna have little, you know, inklings of it. But I went to Pakistan. I usually tell people, I was like, you know, I think I corrupted more people in Pakistan than they actually helped me with my Islam. You know, because I went from being like the dorky brown guy in school in the States to being like the cool American in Pakistan. So everything was just available.
Be good for a teenager, right?
No, it wasn't. It was like my ego was through the roof. But basically, I came back, went to college. Even throughout college, wasn't really no sort of connection with Islam, not much. And then I started working for a company called MCI WorldCom, and I had a manager, and she was, you know, we would have really deep discussions about religion. I wasn't really particularly interested, but she really wanted me to consider Christianity. And she would keep telling me, like, Fahad, you got to find, you got to let Jesus in your life. So I was like, at the time I was like, I don't know much about Islam, but this is really just ridiculous. Like, I'm not that really doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But at the time, that's when I seriously started to study Islam. And really, a lot of credit actually goes to her for me finding Islam. And I had some challenges along the way. My parents were, they didn't embrace it, safe to say,
You find this a lot, it's not just reverts or converts that have this problem. It's like when Muslims actually become practicing.
Yeah.
They have problems of their family and things like that.
No, absolutely. It's funny that, so I was living in that Maryland, Virginia area, and at the time, they would have like lots of durus and lots of like lessons and things like that. And so a friend of mine, when he found out that I was kind of going down this path, trying to study Islam, he said, man, you are in one of the best places in America. You have Sheikh so-and-so and Sheikh so-and-so, and you should go and check out, whatever this place is. So I remember the first time I walk in, and I didn't have a beard at the time. I'm very, no soap, nothing. I walk in this place, everyone has a beard. And it's a small place. I walk in, everyone just turns around and looks at me, and I'm like, oh my God, where have I come, right? Alhamdulillah, the people there were welcoming, and I was able to spend some time with some people of knowledge there, and it really set me on a good path. And I made the same mistakes that a lot of people make. I would go home and be like, Mom, where's your hijab? And she's like, I gave birth to you, right? But I think that happens a lot. That when you first find Islam or you find Islam, you want to kind of adopt everything and kind of just have everything. Yeah. And you want everyone else to have everything as well. And that could lead to some interesting consequences.
So how was it when you came back to the States? It must have been a bit of a culture shock.
From Pakistan?
Yeah, from Pakistan.
So you want the story about... See, these are late night discussions, bro. All right.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just asking, was it a culture shock?
It was a culture... Interestingly enough, it was a culture shock.
Yeah.
Because whatever at the time... Again, I haven't been to Pakistan in like 20 plus years. But at the time, even culturally, they were relatively conservative. Even people that you would consider liberal, right?
Even now, to a certain extent. It's not,
I guess. I said, I haven't been there in a while. But yeah, my first experience was very shocking. So I came to Michigan State, and I was placed in a dorm with what's known as a quad. You have 4 beds in this quad, and 2 in one room, 2 in another, bunk beds. And so I come in. It was really late, 11 o'clock. Mind you, I'm coming from, I think I'd come from Pakistan, stopped in New York or something, and I'm coming in. It's really dark. There's one bed available, so I'm like, okay, that must be mine. So I get up on the bed, I'm exhausted, put my head down, and then a little while later I hear the door, almost bust open. And I'm in the bed, I'm staring at the ceiling, and all of a sudden I hear the bed shake, and then the whole night all I'm hearing is the whole night. You can fill in the blanks, right? And I'm just like, what in the world is going on? Like, I haven't, it's again, it is a culture shock, right? Coming from again, it's somewhat conservative. And I remember the next morning that my roommate at the time, and he said some things to me. It was just in shock. So I was like, he's like, I hope you don't mind the noise last night. I was with, and he's like, and I was like, you were with a girl, right? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, what's her name? Are you, like you engaged? Or like, what's going on? He's like, yeah, that's a good question. I don't remember her name. So I'm like, what the? Anyway,
that must have been a huge culture shock because I know Pakistan.
Yeah,
and even now they're very conservative. Even like the people who are practicing Islam,
it was quite a shock. Wow. He said something else interesting. He said because he was from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and he said, it's really nice knowing you. And man, if you ever came to my part of town, we'd lynch you. Yeah, so that was my first experience back into the U.S. After having a 4 or 5 year hiatus. So it was interesting.
So in your Islamic studies, you and Ayera, you've been focusing on the fitra, atheism and things like this. And you've done some quite interesting research on this. I really enjoyed the late night bedtime stories.
Yeah,
subhanAllah.
So yeah, I mean, I think we've come a long way. You know, I think, initially, and this may be another just progression of the da'iyah, right? Like someone who starts in da'wah, they start with kind of, okay, let's get the rational arguments down. And we start treating people like robots, right? But what we forget is that, again, we're dealing with human beings, and from our tradition, we know that human beings are, made with a fitra, right? Which is that core base state of the human being, that natural state, which is good at its core. Like you remember that talk we did on one of the tours, and I mentioned that very clearly. I was like, we believe our assumption about human beings that they're good before we assume that they're evil. Yeah. Right?
I mean, a lady came up to you, right?
And I was going to mention that. So she came up to me and said, that makes so much sense. Because when you look at a child, like a newborn child, you don't say like, look at that sinful little rat. Right? You say it's an innocent child. So even within our vernacular, even how we approach things, like the fitra is there. And then she said something even more interesting. She said, in our tradition, or in the Christian tradition, we would assume original sin, and that never made sense to me. But what you said to me tonight about the human being, being created in a state of goodness, that actually makes perfect sense. Because we never look at children to say, oh, they're not innocent, right? We always think of them as innocent. So it was...
it's a really insightful tour, actually.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I learned a lot, and it's interesting to see this. How New Zealand is, the way people think. Yeah. I mean, Yusuf Chambers said an interesting thing. He compared it to like England in the 70s. Yeah. It's almost like going back in time, really.
I wouldn't know England in the 70s, but
yeah, but I kind of get where he's coming from.
Right.
The way people think and the way they are. Yeah.
No, it's true, man. I mean, we had some really good conversations. I think, referring back to like Christchurch, things that happened there. You brought up the gentleman in front of the masjid who welcomed the shooter in, and the idea of salam, and kind of what that truly encompasses in terms of, in a sense, when you say assalamu alaikum, someone say salam, you're in fact sending a dua. Right? You're asking Allah to remove harm from them, in a sense. And like a quick way of translating is peace, but at its core, the name of Allah is a salam, the Dar salam, the place where there is absolutely no worries or harm. And then you're wishing that sort of no harm, no worries. May all your financial your financial problems with your spouse, problems with your children, problems with drinking, may all those problems be removed. It's as if you're kind of making that supplication of the person. And and the greeting of when you went to the masjid. I mean, everyone, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim in that tour, they would start off with Salaam Alaikum, like the mayors and stuff. And I think it was powerful that you kind of mentioned. Forgetting what was it, Brother Nabi?
Yeah, Dawood Nabi.
Dawood Nabi. His greeting.
He greeted the killer with Salam, brother.
And so I think that was.
I mean, that got translated in the media as hello, brother.
Hello, brother.
But there's a bigger, deeper meaning behind Salam.
Yeah, and I think when we explored that was really, really good for at least the non-Muslim audience, because it's not just something that, like hello and, whatever other language is used is kind of something you just rattle off sometimes. But with the salam, it has a very profound meaning. So I think that was good.
Now, I want to speak about your alter ego for a moment. Zaid.
Not the theologian.
Not the theologian, the other one.
All right. Yeah, for it.
You've got Zaid, and you've actually developed a few characters.
Yeah.
And you've actually presented the Seerah.
Yeah.
For the youth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just for the youth. I'm sure I'm going to be like really into it when I get home.
Yeah, I got a lot of emails from adults too, man. Yeah. They're like, "This is great," and I'm like, "Did your kids listen to it?" Like, no, but this is great. I'm like, well, it wasn't really for you.
Tell us about this project.
So basically, so I've always had this thing about I want people to like read more. I think we live in an age where we just read tweets, and that's the level of our. And so it's the same with my kids. Like, I want them to read more, but you can't just be like, "Here's a book, read it." So one of the things I thought about was, let's bridge, the area between, let's say, movies, television, video games, and reading by some sort of audio. So I got in the car and I put on Sheikh Yasir Qadi's Seerah series, and we're listening to it, and I'm into it. I think it's great, But every 5 seconds, 10 seconds, hey Baba, what's motif? Hey Baba, what's quintessential? Hey Baba, I'm like, oh my, this is getting nowhere. Like every 5 seconds I'm pausing it, giving them like an English lesson, right? So I figured, let's make a series. I'll just make my own series on the Sida. Basically using Sheikh Yasser Qadi's material and other material.
By the way, I have to stop as well and Google some of these words.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, wait a minute, what is quintessential, right? So I figured, let's put something together for a younger audience. But in addition to just the Sida, we'll have a character that, basically travels back in time, has his own issues that are related to our modern day, and yet he's viewing it from the perspective of a modern day young person viewing the Sida. And so he goes back in time, he's viewing the Sida, narrating it. At the same time, there's someone trying to chase him, sabotage his mission. And there's all sorts of, enemies and, all these adventures that he's going on while he's narrating the Sida. And so it took us a while, but we finished.
What I like is you've got like different characters from different Islamic backgrounds, different madahib, different.
Yeah, so it was just, when you say alter ego, it's actually true, because I kept on thinking okay, my perfect personality would be this, right? So, because in the Sida, we introduced, for instance, a character named Omar Johnson. So he was basically an African-American, just built like a tank, and yet he was what you may call he's a genius, basically, right? Speaks like 6 different languages. He's a polyglot, 6 different languages. He's got like 3 PhDs, something like that. And he's just amazingly intelligent, but amazingly strong. And so he's like this perfect Muslim, right? And in the series, I shouldn't give away too much, but he's sent at one point to help out Zayd during the Battle of Badr, and it's interesting. So that's him. Then we have another character, Nadia Khan, who, interestingly enough, again, I don't want to give away too much, but she has a story within a year with the Prophet. So that's the name of the series. And then, she has her own series now, which is Perfection Personified, through the life of Maryam alayhi salam. But she's basically an archer. She's has deep knowledge. I forgot which madhab I gave her. I think it was maybe the Shafi'i madhab, where she's an expert in that, the Arabic language.
SubhanAllah.
So anyway, I just kind of built these personalities, like what would be the ideal Muslim.
And I think this is going to build the personalities of the youth as well. It kind of gives them a sense of identity and being confident in who they are.
Yeah, and that was one of the other kind of side effects, right? Because a lot of people start saying, okay, well, Muslims have personalities that they can look up to, right? So I would sometimes, I'd finish a Jummah khutbah sometimes in some part of the U.S. and have these kids running up to me like, Zayd! And I'm like, yeah, I guess, It's nice. I mean, it was cute. And it's kind of nice to know that it's having that impact on young people to be able to look up.
I think it's a really good idea. I think it's a great project.
Yeah, Allah accepted, and it's,
So how can we view this? Where can we?
It's the quantumchronicles.com, right? So you go there, you'll be able to download some episodes and check them out. We have an app called we've partnered with an app called Soundwise, and so they kind of host our stuff, and I think people will like it. It's an adventure, man. We're starting off now with Lives of the Prophets. That's the next kind of big thing we want to do. So, but at the same time, it is challenging. Like a lot of stories within the Sida, you have to.
I just want to give them a background, because it's not just you're not just narrating a story. It's not like an audiobook.
No,
you've got sounds. You've got different voices.
So you've got sound effects, like when Zayd is walking through the city and stuff. You hear like people in the background. In battles, you hear like swords clanging, and it's not like an audiobook. In fact, one of the things that I was kind of disappointed, and I think I told you about this. I got on one of the planes and I found like Marvel audiobooks. I'm a Marvel fan. And I saw Doctor Strange. And I was like, this is going to be amazing. This is going to be epic. And I turn it on, and literally the guy's like, Marvel presents Doctor Strange, Chapter 1. And I was like, I'm just like, this is ridiculous, right? So it's totally not an audiobook. It's very high paced.
It's like an audio movie, basically.
It's basically an audio movie. And the idea was, look, I'm competing against like Marvel movies, and so you've got to make it. You've got to add some pace to it. At the same time, we want to make sure that the morals, the things that need to be highlighted are highlighted. So a lot of times I may break a Zayd and be like, I remember, my dad telling me about this, or I remember my sheikh mentioning this from the ayah from the Quran, such and such. Or I remember that being taught about a certain hadith. So you kind of all of that's factored in. Again, the idea is to kind of, not only, the initial idea was to bridge the gap between movies and reading, but also to kind of formulate that character based upon the Prophet ﷺ. You know? So I don't know. I had a good time doing it, so it was good.
I think you enjoyed it more than the.
I may have, yeah, man, because the thing is, you have to read the whole Seerah yourself, right?
Yeah.
So you're getting into like, it's one thing to just go through Sheikh Yasser's Seerah passively, but then when you actively get into it, it's like, what are the implications? And then what are the implications for a young person, right? Let's say 8, 9, 10, all the way up to like 16, 17, 18, 19. Like, what does this mean? The most challenging part of the Seerah was the accusations against Aisha radiallahu anha. And that, I think I recorded it, I don't know, I don't want to say 8, 9 times, just the entire story. Just how do you make that where an 8-year-old can understand it, but they would understand the implications of it, you know? Or at least they would grow up remembering it, and so when they're faced, you know, in situations that are similar, they could relate.
It's already been covered, yeah.
So.
I think that's so important because, you know, a lot of the doubts stem from, you know, youngsters get into college, university, and they've never heard these things before.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, all these kind of doubts just kind of crop up.
Absolutely.
And they're like, whoa, what do you mean?
Right,
you know,
right.
That was her age and things like this.
Right.
Or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You know.
No, so I think my work as a theologian also helped with this year.
That's an insight.
No, but
people have been introducing you as a theologian.
Yeah, I'm not. Just because I studied Islamic theology at UT, I think they just kind of, anyways. But that's a running joke. But again, that had an impact on the series as well, because being in a modern context, we're dealing with a lot of issues related to atheism, related to identity, related to kind of other social pressures that a young person would have. So those were kind of weaved into the Seerah as well.
Yeah.
And I think that you know, I think the benefit of studying that area and then, you know, making a reality for someone that's young is important.
Yeah.
And I think it helps.
Now I want to ask you about, because you also do dialogues with Christians as well.
Yeah.
And you recently had a dialogue with debate dialogue type of thing.
Yeah.
More of a dialogue. Really. Yeah. And I really liked your approach. Yeah. For Christianity specifically.
Sure. So one of the things is that, you know, one of the things I typically, I don't want to say typically, I don't really agree with the whole debate narrative, if you know what I mean, right? Because if you really think about a debate...
Go on, carry on.
Yeah. So if you really think about a debate is basically you have people that are showing up with their egos at their apex, right? Yeah. And then they're going to watch this debate. But the one thing, or you could say like a big impediment to Islam is ego.
Yeah.
So you think about Shaitan. What's the thing that stopped him? I mean, it's not his knowledge. He knew everything, right? Abu Jahl. You know, when he was asked, okay, this man, the Prophet ﷺ, you know, he didn't say like, no, he's not a prophet, or you know, no, the rationally it doesn't make sense to me. He said, okay, we're from Banu Makhzum, he's from Banu Hashim. We've always had this competition, and because now they're saying they have a prophet and we don't have a prophet, we will never accept him. Meaning it didn't have anything to do with some sort of rational argument, but it had to do with egos. So the thing about debates, personally, I don't know if it's the best vehicle for dawah. That being said, what we try to do in the U.S. was to have dialogues, right? And I know some people think of that they're, you know, that basically they're interchangeable. But the format of the dialogue is more of, number one, we want to pick a topic that isn't abrasive, right? So we try to stay away from, you know, is Jesus God, or, you know, the Quran versus the Bible. Yeah. What we're trying to do is saying, okay, look, there's let's say an issue that both Christians and Muslims are dealing with. What is the Islamic position? So one of the dialogues we do is, why does God allow suffering? A Islamic Christian perspective, Christian Islamic perspective, whatever it might be. Now the beauty of that is that from one perspective, both Christians and Muslims are dealing with this from, let's say, some of our youth. But from another perspective is that all you have to do is present Islam, and you don't have to necessarily critique Christianity. And what the result of that is that when people leave, they don't feel an abrasion, but they're kind of a little more open, because it's not a battle of egos now. It's just like, okay, here's an issue. You know, how does Islam deal with it? How does Christianity deal with it? Right? And so all we're doing is literally just presenting Islam, and, you know, we have the truth, right? So therefore, it stands on its own. There's no need for abrasion. Right? And so we've had some interesting experiences. You know, I would say a lot of times, you know, the Christian that would be speaking on the topic, I really felt they were in almost felt sorry for them at a certain point in the dialogue because they were really struggling with it, just based on their theology, God being all loving, etc.
Yeah.
They really did. So,
I mean, of course, with something like the problem of evil, I mean, only Islam can really answer that. So you kind of walk
really.
in with
I mean, you're at an advantage, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, again, but what I like about it.
But I like the format that you're actually presenting Islam rather than focusing on their religion.
Exactly.
Because that's kind of how it goes in a debate. Where you're more questioning them about their religion.
Yeah.
Rather than actually presenting Islam.
Yeah. No. Absolutely, man. I mean, the thing is, my main thing is that look, you don't want people to leave with a bad taste in their mouth, right? That okay, Islam. This guy came, and let's say even if you win the debate. But have you really won the hearts of the people, right? And that's really what you want to do. Something like, why does God allow suffering? I mean, that's something that people deal with, right? And at some point in your life, you may ask, okay, well, I did all these things, and I'm a good person. Why would God do this? And the fact that we have something that's unequivocal, that's clear, and that's attached to existential questions, which I think is really important, right? Because you can't really understand the problem of evil from an Islamic perspective without understanding why you're here, why you're created, and what happens when you die, right? And the fact that you'll be judged. That idea of kind of a purpose, once you understand that, and you tie kind of those wisdoms that Allah has given for certain things being perceived evil for you, a lot of those things make sense. Like the last time we spoke, I remember I mentioned this in the dialogue. I said, when my wife's father passed away, Allah yarhamhu, it was very hard for her. But she had said something which still sticks to me now, and she said, had it not been for Islam, I don't think I would have been able to get through this.
SubhanAllah.
Right?
SubhanAllah.
And that's really what it is, right? Because we understand that our life is not just, from the point we're alive to the point we die, but we have an afterlife. And kind of highlighting that and tying that into something that affects us as humans, I think is very powerful. And it comes out in a dialogue.
Yeah.
So that's what we've tried to do. The other topic we're trying to explore is true spirituality. And again, we're not trying to be abrasive, but when we look at spirituality from an Islamic perspective, I mean, really, it's the truth. No one can compete.
Yeah. Share something with us.
In terms of spirituality?
Yeah, spirituality.
Oh man, like where do you start, man? So Islamic. I mean, one thing was the ego, for instance. We said debates. I mean, that's one that's very powerful. I don't know, man. Off the top of my head, what do we want to spiritual practices? So one of the things that you'll notice in the Quran is that we speak about knowledge. And knowledge is very important. But when you scan the Quran, you see that there's a link between knowledge and spirituality, right? إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء, right? That that the people who truly have khushu', who fear, not fear, but it's kind of have awe of Allah, are the people of knowledge. So right there you have a spiritual kind of concept tied with the idea of knowledge. For instance, the dua of the Prophet ﷺ, Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqa wa razaqna ittiba'ah. Oh Allah, show me truth as truth and allow me to follow it. Help me follow it. But it's in the form of a dua, which is a spiritual act, right? So you find that this concept, just taking it from the point of knowledge is not a vacuum. It's not like, and that's comes down to, we were talking about dawah and having the best rational arguments, but we don't have rational arguments in a vacuum. We're talking to a human being, and a human being has a spiritual reality, right? The ruh of the human being, right? That's really our reality. In the talks that we did in some places, remember I was talking about the ayah in the Quran, وَلَا تَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ نَسُوا اللَّهَ فَأَنْسَاهُمْ أَنفُسَهُم. Do not be like those who forgot God, so God caused them to forget themselves. And so we ask, what does it mean to forget ourselves, right? Is it, because like atheists, for instance, they still brush their teeth and they still, have careers and they still do the things that they haven't forgotten themselves. But what I usually tell people, I say, okay, well, imagine, God forbid, you get in a car accident and you lose an arm, right? Are you still you? Yeah. You lose your other arm. Are you still you? Yeah. God forbid, you lose your legs. Are you still you? Yeah, all of that. You're still. So what makes you? Right? You've seen it every time I've done it. So,
but it's true.
And so what we say is that there's something deeper, and that from our tradition is the ruh.
The body is hanging on, basically.
Right, and you have your material reality, sure, but then you have your spiritual reality, and that comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, right? That He breathed into the human being the ruh. And we don't let's say we can't know every detail about that reality, but the reality is that, what makes you from our tradition, it's the ruh, and it's your spirituality.
Yeah.
I think this is very interesting in the context of Ramadan, which is interesting because in Ramadan, it's as if Allah has instituted something where it says, look, 11 months out of the year, you're focusing on your material body.
Yeah.
Now for 1 month, focus on your real self, and that's your ruh, right? Because, your material body, where does it get its sustenance? It gets it from where it was created, right? The earth, right? We eat like whatever, cows and, whatever. Maybe some vegans don't, vegetables, whatever. It all comes from the earth. So its source of sustenance is the earth, right? What about the ruh though? Like, where does the ruh come from? And so Allah says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الرُّوحِ. They ask you concerning the ruh. الرُّوحِ min amri Rabbi, that the ruh is from the amr, from the command of Allah. How does Allah issue commands? Right? Kun fayakun, right? He issues from His kalam, His speech. Do we have access to His speech? The Quran. So the source of the ruh is Allah, right? The speech of Allah, and so we have access. So the sustenance for the body comes from the earth. The sustenance for the ruh comes from the Quran, right? So in Ramadan, you're supposed to weaken the body, right? By doing away with food and strengthening the ruh by having more Quran. So I mean, it's beautiful, right?
Yeah. You never told me that one on the trip.
I don't. Maybe I missed it.
Man,
Maybe it was late one night, and you were just like, "That was good," but I'm going sleepy.
SubhanAllah, no, it's beautiful. SubhanAllah. Yeah. So are you planning on writing a book or anything?
Yeah, we're inshallah, we'll be penning some stuff together. One of the things that just working with Aira and Hamza as well is that we really have to be thorough. We talk about these things, and we want to make sure that obviously we want to be within the tradition. It's being checked and all those things. So I think writing is a little. It's a process. So it may take a little time, but yeah, inshallah, the intention is there to pen some of this, along with some of the discussions we had related to Christianity.
Inshallah.
As well, so. Inshallah.
Jazakallah khair, bro.
Wayak.
And hopefully I'll see you again soon, inshallah.
Definitely, man. Definitely.
Jazakallah khair.
Wayak. It's nice seeing you, man, so much. Assalamu alaikum.
إنك لا تهدي من أحببت ولكن الله يهدي من يشاء